Today on From the Kitchen, we have breakfast sausage, Jimmy Dean regular, Butterball Turkey Breakfast sausage, Great Value Premium sausage, Tennessee Pride Mild Country sausage, and actually 2 versions of Bob Evans Original, one on a flat and one in a tube. I buy it so you don't have to. And as usual, I have no affiliation with any of these brands. Each sausage was prepared to about 165 degrees as measured by a temperature probe. And let's start with Bob Evans Original on the flat. If you want your sausage patties pre-sliced, this might be a way to go. The ingredients list pork and water as the primary ingredients, with less than 2% being dextrose, MSG, and maltodextrin. So right away we go into our research tab for more information. Maltodextrin, according to Wikipedia, this is generally recognized as safe. WebMD suggests this is a highly processed carbohydrate with a higher glycemic index than sugar. Dextrose is another type of sugar, usually from corn or wheat, which is very similar to glucose. There's a bit more food science going on here than I'd hoped. I thought it would be cute to mash these into a hamburger-sized patty to fit on the biscuit. It's probably too much for your typical biscuit, unless you like that kind of thing. Bob Evans' original patties were firm and well marbled, and have a nice pink meaty look. While cooking, there wasn't much liquid that collected in the pan, and the texture of the final patty was like an 80-20 beef patty. Firm and juicy without being tough. It had a nice even balanced spice, little sage forward flavor, good and enjoyable. It felt and tasted like quality. Yeah, I was right. This looks like way too much sausage on this biscuit, but it didn't taste like it. Good stuff. Next, we have Butterball's Turkey Breakfast sausage. The package was more, and this won't be flattering, mushy than any of the pork sausages. I think we'll see why later. The ingredients are pretty simple though. Turkey with less than 2% salt, sugar, spice, and rosemary extract. The appearance is like a very wet, finely ground dark meat. It's just in the pan and liquid starts coming off the sausage. Midway through the cooking process, and there's a pool of liquid, grease, and water. The smell during cooking was mildly sour, which isn't the "y'all come to the table now, I'm making sausage" that you wanted. By the end of the cooking process, most of the liquid, I assumed to be water, had boiled away. On the plate though, this still doesn't look appetizing to me. The texture was still tender to the mouth. It kind of tastes like pork sausage, but it's repulsively salty. This might be good as an additive to something else, an omelet or quiche, something, but by itself it's way too salty. Now let's look at Great Value Premium sausage. The ingredients here are probably the most straightforward of this group, with pork, water, salt, spices, and sugar. The package felt firm like the other pork sausages, and again this sausage had a nice pink marbled appearance. While cooking, it did produce a significant amount of lost liquid. The Great Value's cooked presentation here seems less brown and what I think is a more boiled appearance. The sausage holds together in the mouth, albeit with a grainy texture, and by that I mean it's more in line with a coarser grind and maybe a comment on the quality of the meat rather than a filler. It comes across fatty and less than, as the label suggests, premium. At the end of cooking, there was a liquid remaining in the pan which did not separate, and to my estimation, it was one of the greasiest selections. The flavor is a mildly spiced sausage, pepper and sage. The flavor is satisfactory, but not preferred. Alright, onto the Jimmy Dean regular. The package was reasonably firm, and the appearance looks like a finely ground pink meat. It may not be as nicely marbled as the Bob Evans sausage, but there's nothing off-putting in its general appearance. Its ingredients list pork, water, and less than 2% corn syrup, salt, natural flavor, vinegar, sugar, pork broth, and MSG. I didn't get any video of this one cooking, but it didn't generate a lot of grease or lost liquid. In the mouth it is firm, less firm than Bob Evans. A good solid texture without being hamburger-like. Jimmy Dean has a nice level of spice and pepper, Full disclosure, Jimmy Dean has been one of my go-to sausages up to now. Next on our list today is Tennessee Pride, mild country sausage. The ingredients list fresh pork, water and salt, spices, sugar, MSG, and celery extract. What's that about? With its natural nitrates, it's commonly used in curing meats. Tennessee Pride was normally firm in the package and had a good marbled appearance. While cooking, it generated some lost liquid, mostly fat, but it browned up nicely. As cooked, Tennessee Pride had a nice firmness, well ground and smooth, and it came apart satisfying in the mouth. The texture is similar to Jimmy Dean. It is, however, at the top of the saltiness acceptance level. The spice level was pleasant and not remarkable. One thing that stands out with Tennessee Pride, it has a porky flavor the others don't have. That's about as well as I can describe it. If you know, you know. Up next is Bob Evans Original. But I had to include this after I noticed the ingredients were different than the patty packaging. It might be worth some research as to why, but my speculation is to maintain the presentation quality in a transparent package. The ingredients list pork, water, and less than 2% salt. Spices, MSG, potassium lactate. And what is potassium lactate for? Fresh out of the refrigerator, the tube feels firm, as you would expect for ground meat. The meat is nicely marbled and pinkish, venturing toward a red in spots. Not surprising when you look at the fat content that there's so much white area. Frying it up, it looks to be browning really well, and while it did lose some liquid, it wasn't pooling enough to soak the meat. You know, it's really hard to read this and not have my mouth watering. Anyway, the texture is firm and comes apart well in the mouth. It is a bit fatty, but not overly so comparatively. It's moist, sage and pepper forward. It's satisfyingly pork sausage without being piggy. This ends up being one of my favorites. I think I could make it a toss-up between Jimmy Dean and Bob Evans Original. And now for my rankings. Let's talk about lost liquid. These aren't measured results, but my overall impressions. The Butterball sausage was leaking water as soon as it hit the pan, and I believe that's what made it feel mushy. Great Value had a significant amount of fat rendered out of it, and it doesn't have the highest fat content. And Tennessee Pride, Jimmy Dean, and Bob Evans Original had about half as much fat loss in cooking as Great Value. And the Bob Evans patties were probably the driest. There's a lot of dietary concern around how much fat you ingest, so let's talk about fat content. It's likely a question of food science as to why Bob Evans Original and Tennessee Pride, with the highest fat content of those tested here, left less fat in the pan than the Great Value. Whether it's a quality, processing, or my preparation variation that are at work here, I can't say. For processing negatives in my context is moving farther from natural. Great Value, the ingredients list is as basic as it gets. Butterball, nearly as basic as Great Value, but seems to have water as a filler. And Bob Evans Original Patty, well, straight up food science to me. Now ratings. Flavor, in my opinion, best to worst. Probably Jimmy Dean, well-rounded, spiced, and generally satisfying sausage. And Bob Evans Original, one of the better flavors, sage and pepper with a good amount of moisture. Probably a toss-up between those two. Tennessee Pride, not unsatisfying, but it did have a porky flavor, and it was very salty. Great Value. I would eat this, but given other choices, I'm open to shopping around. And Butterball, it's a pass for me, even with no other choices. Just no. Do you agree with my rankings? Is there another sausage I need to review? Put your thoughts in the comments below. Pork water contains 2% less corn syrup.
Good and I wanna be a fool. If it's out, well, I wanna be a fool.
Y'all come to the table now. I'm making sausage.